Good day, duelists, and welcome to the first of hopefully many Duel Masters deck profiles that I'll be posting on my channel in the foreseeable future in an effort to properly showcase all Duel Masters decks that I own in my collection. And what better way to start this short mini-series than with this red, blue, black control, or RUB control for short. This deck is an absolute classic of Duel Masters history, and this version in particular that I'll be showing off today aims to be modernized in such a way that it can stand its ground in today's very competitive meta environment. Normally I would start a deck profile with the deck's main strategy so that we can understand each individual card choice, but the thing about this deck is that it can play in many different ways depending on what you're up against. It can starve the opponent of resources and drop a Bolmeteus after all the removal is gone. It can mount up pressure with small creatures and slowly poke away at shields or go in all at once in one push. Or it can even, if desperate, play the deck out war, stalling the game out and using Slash Charger to thin the opponent's deck. We'll go into all of this in detail, but before that, one thing that we have to understand is RUB used to be the premier control back way back when in the old days of Duel Masters, but as the meta got more refined and people started exploring new territory, it started to lose track to soul swap based controls like 4-bus control, Fortress Born, or more recently LDN control. RUB can't really keep up with the late game of such decks, so modern RUB is forced to take a more proactive approach, which is why we have all of these small bodies that can create early board pressure. And on that note, let's go through each of them one by one. We have Aqua Halcus, a Duel Masters classic, generates card advantage while maintaining tempo, so it fits like a glove in this list. Next up we have Locomotiver, same concept as Aqua Halcus, it helps with card advantage, but this time by disrupting the opponent instead of drawing you cards. Being a shield trigger can also help against aggro decks, which is a recurring theme we'll see more moving forward. Coral is an interesting one. I've talked about this many times before in my videos about how this card hasn't really seen that much competitive success in the modern metagame, because it's hard to find a deck that cares about both the bounce effect, which is an aggressive / tempo play, and the draw skip effect, which is a control play. But this is one example of a deck that does combine both playstyles, so Korra really does make sense here. Only two though, because we already have enough spot removal. Speaking of which, the next card in the deck is Aqua Surfer. This is here because it can single-handedly win aggro matchups if it comes out the shields at the right time. We're playing the full playset to maximize the odds of that happening. Next up, yet another shield trigger creature in Magma Rex. This is a deceivingly strong card because initially, you read its effect and go, it only kills creatures with 1000 power, that's so narrow. Well, A, there are a lot of 1000 power creatures roaming around like Braidclaw, Rikaboo, Bronzehorn Tribe, and the list goes on, but also B, it doesn't just deal with 1000, it can also kill one 2000 power creature every single turn by attacking into it, and even take out a 3000 power if desperate. The only reason why we only run two of is because space in this deck is very tight, and we already have mass removal part covered by Apocalypse Vise, arguably the strongest and most versatile board wipe in all of Duel Masters. And our final small body is Emerald. This little one allows you to swap a card in your hand with a shield, which allows you to set up your shield triggers against aggressive decks, but can also dig for some key cards that might be stuck in shields. For example, if your Bolmeteus gets sent there by a miraculous snare cast by your opponent. And while we're here, let's finish the shield trigger section with Terror Pit. Just an absolute classic, allows you to remove anything off the board, no questions asked, which is helpful in case you are staring down a scary threat like an opposing Bolmeteus, and can also be game winning if it comes out of shields at the right time. As you can see, we're running a large ratio of shield triggers, and that's because this is the preferred method of defense against aggro with this deck. You can't really afford to run cards like Bloody Skeeto because they are just dead against other control decks, and you really need proactive cards to win those matchups. That said, we do run one blocker, which is Thrashcrawler. This is our only way of getting cards back from the mana zone, which is an important effect to have because you'll probably want to charge your high cost cards if you draw them early and you don't want them to be gone forever. And of course the fact that it's a blocker does help against aggressive decks. And to finish up our anti-aggro section, we have one copy of Miraculous Meltdown. Since you are playing a decent chunk of attacking creatures, some of which can come from shields, it's quite likely that by turn 6 you'll have a couple or so bodies. And if you do, if your aggressive opponent has put you down to 1 or 0 shields, you can use this surprise card to just snatch the win out of nowhere, and you wouldn't believe how often that actually happens. Alright, and for the final part of the deck, this one is dedicated to the Bolmeteus game plan. Bolmeteus Steel Dragon is an incredibly strong finisher that can just win the games by itself. It puts the opponent's shield straight into the graveyard, which means no shield triggers and no cards advantage, just free attacks if it's allowed to stay on the board. The main problem with it though is that it's very vulnerable to removal. You spend 7 mana on it, and if it gets removed you risk falling behind in tempo, which is something that you can't afford. So in general, before you slam down a volley, you want to starve your opponent of resources. And thus we have come to talk about the Lost Soul Race. Lost Soul is a key card that forces your opponent to discard their entire hand. It's widely known that in control mirrors, the first player to successfully cast the spell usually wins. It's the Lost Soul Race. And that is never truer than with this deck in particular, as following up a Lost Soul with the Bolmeteus is a 1-2 punch that's almost impossible to recover from. So you want to cast Lost Soul before your opponent, and in order to do that, you need mana ramp. We're fighting an uphill battle because we're not playing nature, but we can still try our best by playing Chargers. Slash Charger is the earliest ramp we have available at 3 mana. It can take away a keycard from the opponent's deck, and it can also help if you're trying to go for the deck out plan. Then we have Eureka Charger that preserves card advantage while ramping, and Volcano Charger that can fend off small bodies while again ramping you up in mana. And for our final ramp card we have one copy of Corpse Charger, which gives the deck some much needed grave recursion. You want to be able to recover your Bolmeteus from the graveyard, and Corpse Charger does just that. We also play Tanzanite the Awakener, which is another card we need to talk about here. This is the deck's primary graveyard recovery tool, but of course, if the tool itself gets destroyed or slashed away, you want a way to get it back, which is why we also need Corpse Charger. These two complement each other really well. Another neat interaction with Corpse Charger is getting the Thrash Crawler back and using Thrash Crawler's effect to take back the Corpse Charger after it's cast. So now if your Thrash Crawler dies, you can just Corpse Charger it back and keep going. This is called the Corpse Loop, and it's a great way to stabilize against aggro after you've dealt with their board. And just a couple more cards to talk about. The first one is Bazagazio Dragon. This beast of a creature acts as repeatable removal, being able to destroy one creature every single turn. If the opponent is in top deck mode, this can be game winning all by itself. But Baza also acts as a potent finisher since it gives you the option of destroying 2 shields straight from hand, which can be used to apply pressure and sometimes outright end duels. And the final card I want to talk about is Energy Stream. It acts as an additional card draw to supplement the Aqua Halkas we've seen before. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, it really depends on the board state. This deck runs a 4-2 split, but you can also go 3-3 or even some other ratios. Energy Stream is also a great recovery tool, like for example, following an opposing Lost Soul. And I guess that's pretty much it. We talked about every single card and the reason why it's there, and we touched on the many different strategies and game plans this deck can have. Overall, I really recommend everyone to try it out. It may not be considered like a tier 1 deck in today's competitive landscape, but it's still a very strong deck with quite a lot of depth behind it, and I personally believe that it's a very instructive deck in that it does a decent job of actually teaching its user about Duel Masters fundamentals. So that's it from me, duelists. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. There are more to come, so make sure to stay tuned. Until next time everyone, take care.